Hello all, and welcome to today's webinar on Applied Baccalaureate degrees in STEM Technician Education. My name is Colin Rood, and I am a Research Associate here at the Office of Community College Research and Leadership at the University of Illinois. I wanted to take a few moments and share some technical considerations with you. First, there is a spot on the right-hand side of your webinar panel that is labeled Questions or Chat. If you ever have any technical problems, have questions of our speakers or panelists, or wish to share thoughts, you may do so there at any time throughout the webinar. Those of you who are using speakerphones may find audio quality improved if you mute the microphone of your phone. For any technical issues, please send a message in that questions bar, or you can send me an email directly at cruud2@illinois.edu. Thank you for your consideration. With that, I would like to turn the webinar over to Julia Makala.
Hello, and welcome to the Office of Community College Research and Leadership's third webinar on Applied Baccalaureate degrees. We are looking forward today to sharing an update on our most recent research in a technical report which was released just last month. My name is Julia Makala, and we also have Colin Rood here from our office and our research team. And we've also invited Chris Mullen from the American Association of Community Colleges, and he'll be providing a reaction and a response to our work after we present some of our research. As we begin, I'd like to start with a brief poll question that Colin's going to post for us so that you can let us know a little bit about your experience and your interest with Applied Baccalaureate degrees. You should be seeing this come up on your screen right now, and we'd like to, if you could quickly respond to what is your interest in the topic that we are tackling today. We'll give you just a few moments to do that, and that'll give us a sense of who we're speaking to.
We'll run the poll for probably another 15 seconds. Thanks.
All right, then Colin will work here to see if you can share some of the poll results, and I can't see them on that screen. Can you help me out there? Great. Okay, so the vast majority of you are new to Applied Baccalaureate degrees, are interested in developing an Applied Baccalaureate degree pathway in the near future, and that is very helpful to us. That's somewhat what we expect with these presentations, and you are the folks that we are attempting to reach out to and to share this information with. So thank you so much for joining us today. What we're going to be doing in the presentation today is first we're going to start off with a brief discussion about what an Applied Baccalaureate degree is, and Colin's going to lead us through that. Once we have some background and we're kind of all on the same page with that, we'll move into a section where we talk about our current research, why we're studying Applied Baccalaureate degrees, and why we're doing so specifically in STEM technician education. We'll share some of our current research and our findings, and then as I mentioned before, we'll turn the floor over to Chris Mullen for some reflections on that work. And then we'll leave plenty of time at the end for some questions from you. You are welcome to type your questions into the chat box at any time throughout the presentation, and we'll remind you at the end to throw some things in there so that we can respond. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Colin to talk a little about Applied Baccalaureate degrees.
Thank you, Julia. So one of the things that we often get asked when we talk about Applied Baccalaureate degrees is, simply put, what is an Applied Baccalaureate degree? In many ways, AB degrees really are a moving target. We have seen and considered several definitions for AB degrees, which emphasize different characteristics and may even conflict with one another. So before we begin, we would like to learn from you and have you in this discussion as well. So in that questions / chat bar on the side of your webinar screen, if you'd like to, could you please write a few words or a short sentence describing what you think of when you think of the term Applied Baccalaureate degrees? I'll go ahead and open it up for about 30 to 45 seconds to get your responses, and I'll also try to highlight a few of your responses. So just feel free to write those in at any point in that questions / chat bar on the side of your screen. Okay, we're getting a few responses in right now, so I'd certainly like to highlight a few of them. The first response we got from Mike Deal said it's a 4-year technical degree. I've also seen a response, Vidal Chivana's, a degree offered by a community college with a specific focus on hands-on practical skills. Paul Crawford, primarily degrees that provide a capstone baccalaureate for individuals with AAS degrees. It's Edward Olson, an AB is a component of real-world application of knowledge and skills. A lot of really great responses there. So let's go ahead and talk about how AB degrees have actually been defined in the past. The first definition that we have here is presented by Arnie Hardebeck Estrada and Permenter. They provide one of the earlier definitions we could find by laying out that AB degrees are programs that specifically are designed for non-traditional students. Another important element taken from their definition of an AB degree is that it allows for the transfer of technical credit hours. This is a central focus of their definition, that some, if not all, technical credits are applied to a baccalaureate level program. And we can definitely see in some of your responses here that the whole application of technical credit is certainly a piece in a lot of your definitions. But moving on to the second definition that we found from Walker and Floyd, they move in a different direction, highlighting that AB degrees are synonymous with workforce baccalaureate degrees and outline the explicit intent that the degrees were created to meet identified workforce demands. By this definition, baccalaureate degrees that are in fields such as education and nursing are also included by having a strong workforce emphasis. In the case of their definition, AB degrees are also seen as degrees primarily offered by associate degree granting institutions, or what many may refer to as the Community College Baccalaureate, or CCB. In many states, we do see this distinction, but in Florida especially, where Walker and Floyd focus much of their research, the CCB degrees created there have a heavy workforce emphasis. Walker and Floyd's definition additionally talks about components of an AB education, which includes applied and contextual learning as well as on-the-job learning. In this case, it is less about the degrees or courses that are transferred and more about the curricular emphasis of the resulting degree. Finally, we do see a definition presented by Townsend, Bragg, and Rood, outlined in their report, which focuses on the transfer of applied associate coursework and degrees that had historically been considered terminal or often non-baccalaureate level due to its emphasis on technical education. This definition goes beyond what is transferred and includes a definition that specifies that students move into a program that teaches higher order thinking skills and advanced technical knowledge and skills so desired in today's job market. Some have critiqued this statement since it is unclear what this constitutes, but it also emphasizes that program quality and outcomes are important to the degree. Now, all of these AB degree definitions provide interesting insight into how some are looking at ABs, and I can certainly see, I do see some folks talk about the Applied Baccalaureate degree as being one that's offered by two-year institutions. There's a heavy technical emphasis. I see some definitions that talk about it being a direct complement to an AAS degree. That's coming from Kenneth Crockett. But we also want to make sure that we're seeing how these degrees are lived out in practice. So the matrix of degree designations that you see on your screen includes the Associate and Bachelor of Applied Science as well as the Associate and Bachelor of Science in order to outline some of the interesting pathways we have seen throughout our studies. You know, it would be easy to say that degrees with applied in the title constitute applied degrees, but the reality is far more complex. Some states, for example, do not allow for unique degree identifiers such as applied, and these terms carry different meanings across different locales. When we ask people who work in higher education to identify AB programs, we do get a variety of responses. The first, and likely most straightforward, is the direct transfer of a historically terminal Associate of Applied Science transferring to a Bachelor of Applied Science. In our example here, we see it lived out. An AAS in Nuclear Power Technology at Bismarck State College transfers within the same institution to a BAS in Energy Management. And we also see this type of transfer happening between institutions across the U.S. Another pathway that we have encountered is the AS to BAS degree. The Associate of Science, largely considered a transferable associate degree, is going to a defined Bachelor of Applied Science. The BAS in Software Development at the University of Central Florida accepts AS degree transfer from a number of institutions within Florida. So while the AS may be considered a transfer degree, we have seen it move to a degree largely considered an Applied Baccalaureate. Also, it is important to note that some states do not have the AAS degree designations. In some states, the AAS is considered the typically terminal or technical associate degree, further complicating the definition of an applied baccalaureate. We also see instances where applied associate degrees have an avenue for transfer to a traditional baccalaureate program. In one case, it is the AAS in robotics technology at Baltimore City Community College, which can then transfer to the BS in industrial engineering at Morgan State University. So instead of an AAS to a BAS pathway, we see an AAS moving into a traditional BS program. And then there's the case of the transfer associate degree, in this case an associate of science, which transfers to a traditional bachelor's of science degree. At first glance, one might think that this is not an AB degree pathway, but in our research we have heard some interesting arguments to the contrary. The example noted on the right side of this page is a case from California. In the state, all associate degrees are AA or AS degrees. There are no applied associate degrees such as the AAS. As such, some state that all associate degrees are therefore designated to transfer. Yet, representatives at Moorpark College and Oxnard College told us a different story. These community colleges developed associate degree programs in information technology, but there were no options available for a baccalaureate transfer in the field. So the associate degrees were technically non-transferable simply by the nature of their focus. And it wasn't until California State University Channel Islands created the IT bachelor's degree with support from NSF that courses which did not transfer in the past now had a place to transfer. So you can begin to see how the representatives of these programs identified with the characteristics that we previously shared when talking about applied baccalaureate degrees. Finally, an important dimension to acknowledge with AB degrees is that there are many curriculum designs found in practice. So this figure that you see in front of you is drawn from a previous study conducted by OCCRL with support from Lumina Foundation. It demonstrates a variety of structures that the upper-level baccalaureate curriculum may have. And so you see 5 boxes there allowing transfer from the applied associate degrees. The first is that career ladder, which represents a stepwise academic and technical coursework for students who get a technical applied associate degree. Second, we see the management capstone where students receiving the technical associates are given business and management-oriented courses on top of that 2-year program. Then in the upside-down program, we see a variety of general education coursework that leads students to a specific bachelor's degree where the 2 years taken at the associate's level are considered the major of the baccalaureate program. The completion model represents a model in which students with an AAS degree or any terminal associate's degree are given whatever requisite courses are required to get them to the nearest bachelor's degree, which is often considered a Bachelor of General Studies or a Bachelor of Applied and Liberal Sciences. And then finally, we see a hybridization of programs where there may be a combination of management, career ladder. There may be a heavy gen ed focus, but there may be a technical component as well. So we certainly see a variety of models. So taking the various definitions, credential names, and observed curriculum designs into account, we have found that our understanding of AB degrees is constrained when we limit ourselves to one of these single definitions. We find that it is important to look across AB programs, starting with a broad brushstroke, to understand the landscape, and then focus on specific degree pathways and observe them in detail. So rather than rely on a single definition, we focused on a few compelling characteristics of these AB degrees, such as the applied focus of learning and coursework, the idea of new opportunities for further emerging for students who had received terminal associate degrees, and the search for quality degree pathways that lead to measurable outcomes for students and graduates. So that's a long route to defining an applied baccalaureate degree, and it certainly doesn't result in a single definition, but it gives you an idea of where we're coming from. And so I'd like to turn it back over to Julia.
Thank you so much, Colin. And while you were describing that, we actually had a question come in that I think might be helpful to answer up front, and maybe you can help us with this. Someone asked about our definition or how we think about the idea of technical credit versus those that are the transfer credits. Could you share a little bit about how we distinguish between those? Or I can do it if you'd like to.
Julie, I'm more than welcome to let you talk about that.
Okay. Well, I thought this might be helpful up front. And yes, we do talk a lot about, as we're going along here, which courses are technical credits, which courses are academic or transfer credit. And these are terms that we are pulling from our experience in the field, that technical courses tend to be the more applied, the hands-on learning courses. And they are the courses that don't typically transfer, I guess, historically to the four-year degree. So that's how we're thinking about those particular courses. So I hope that is helpful. If you have further questions, please feel free to send them our way. But let's go ahead in the meantime and move forward to talk a little bit about our own research and why we've chosen to study applied baccalaureate degrees, specifically in STEM fields. One of the frames that we use to situate our work is the national calls for raising college completion levels. As you may be aware, some challenging goals have been set by politicians, educational foundations, and higher education institutions alike. For example, President Obama called for helping an additional 5 million Americans to earn post-secondary degrees and certificates in the next decade, and the Lumina Foundation's big goal is to raise the proportion of the American adult population that holds a college degree or credential from the current 37.9% to 60% by 2005. Examining STEM fields is a particularly interesting lens for this work because of the demand for a highly trained and educated workforce in this area. On this slide, you see some data projections from Carnevale et al., who state that in 2008, 92% of STEM employers had some post-secondary education, with 71% having at least a bachelor's degree. Those educational attainment requirements are projected to remain steady through 2018 as STEM occupations continue to grow and expand. So there's a great need to focus on post-secondary educational opportunities in STEM fields and to think about it in new ways. We must consider more inclusive educational strategies and examine a variety of degree pathways if we are to meet the needs for an educated workforce. AB degrees represent one emerging approach for addressing the bachelor degree attainment needs. Now, we chose to examine applied baccalaureate degrees through the lens of the National Science Foundation's Advanced Technological Education Program, and we find this to be an attractive starting point because the NSF-ATE program offers us a direct connection between STEM career fields and STEM education offered by community colleges, which are the institutions that award the applied associate degrees and therefore serve as the first step in the applied baccalaureate degree pathway. Our research to date has focused in the three areas that you see on the slide here. First, we sought to identify baccalaureate degree pathways in STEM technician education, and this was accomplished with an exploratory online survey that was sent to all principal investigators who received NSF-ATE grants in the past 20 years. And it resulted in their reporting of 95 baccalaureate degree pathways. Note here that we initially gathered information on all types of baccalaureate degree pathways rather than limiting our focus to the applied baccalaureate. And that was in order to provide context and some opportunities for comparison in later analysis. The second thing we did is that we explored curricula that make up the identified degree pathways. We went out and searched departmental, degree program, and transfer information pages on the websites of all the associate degree granting and the baccalaureate degree granting institutions that were involved in each of the identified pathways to locate course requirements and curriculum sequence documents. Now, one particular challenge in this aspect of our research was that information posted on websites frequently omitted key details needed to provide a complete and accurate picture of the degree programs. We found evidence of baccalaureate degree pathways on institutional websites in only 51 of the 95 cases. And in 40 cases, we were able to examine course requirements and/or course sequencing documents. Now, the review of the available documents allowed us to determine whether each case was an example of an applied baccalaureate degree or a traditional baccalaureate degree pathway, also to determine what curricular models were used, and then to examine some similarities and differences among the identified curricula. Finally, we used a follow-up survey and in-depth website reviews to gather detailed information on the identified applied baccalaureate degree pathways. The primary purpose of these efforts was to learn as much as possible about those identified pathways and to understand how information about applied baccalaureate degree pathways is communicated to stakeholders. During that data collection, we uncovered 10 applied baccalaureate degree pathways that were recommended by survey respondents as having notable characteristics that may qualify as exemplary or promising practices that we would like to examine further. So now I'd like to share some of the ideas and findings with you that were drawn from this work. We'll begin with the first idea presented in our webinar's title. New baccalaureate degree pathways in STEM technician education are clearly emerging. Based on responses to our first exploratory survey, just over 40% of respondents indicated that their NSF-ATE Predictor Center was affiliated with associate degrees that had established formal pathways to baccalaureate degrees. We identified 95 cases in which those degree pathways existed. Interestingly, based on the data gathered from institutional websites, we learned that nearly 10% of all of those identified cases were in some stage of development, ranging from folks being in early talks between associate degree granting and baccalaureate degree granting institutions, all the way to new programs that were scheduled to enroll their first class of students this coming fall 2012. Furthermore, among the identified baccalaureate degree pathways, applied baccalaureate degrees had a very strong presence. Recall that when we were able to locate information about the degree pathways on the institutional websites, we could then determine their content to decide if they fit the characteristics of applied baccalaureate degrees. Of the cases we could examine, almost 70% were in fact identified as applied baccalaureate degrees. Finally, of the applied baccalaureate degree pathways that were recognized as notable by survey respondents, 7 of them had been developed in the past 10 years, and 2 of those were planning to enroll their first class of students this fall. Not only did we see applied baccalaureate degree pathways emerging in recent years, but we found established programs adapting in response to perceived influences from the environments in which they operate. We'll talk a bit about these first 2 bullets in more detail when we discuss curriculum a bit later, but I want to acknowledge these adaptations here. In several cases, we observed that non-transferable associate degree programs, typically applied associate degrees, such as the Associate Applied Sciences, were adapted into transferable associate degrees, often an AS degree, in order to create the formal pathway to the baccalaureate degree. In some cases, both the applied associate and the transfer associate degrees remained, existing side by side in one field in one institution, and in other cases, the transfer degree was created to replace the applied degree. We also observed a case in Florida where the baccalaureate degree program was moved from a public university to a public community college in efforts to smooth the transition from associates to baccalaureate degrees. In this case, the applied baccalaureate degree pathway would now also fall into the category of a community college baccalaureate degree. Finally, we observed a case in California where the faculty at the baccalaureate degree granting institution was in the process of reshaping their course and program descriptions to put a greater focus on the pathway for their own native students rather than highlighting the pathway for transfer students. This change was taking place because the demographics of their degree program participants, the program had changed from one designed primarily for transfer students to a program that was drawing a 2-to-1 ratio of native to transfer students. So when we look at the landscape of applied baccalaureate degrees, these examples give us a sense that we're capturing a snapshot of information on a truly moving target. And that leads us to several new questions in our mind as we move forward with future research. For example, here's a couple of questions that we'd like to explore. With the evidence that these degree programs are emerging in recent years, what are the perceived needs that are driving program development? Perhaps some of you out there who are currently involved in developing programs can help us with that question. And how are those needs translated into action, and do the resulting degree programs end up meeting those needs? And then in regards to adaptations, what are the characteristics of a program that encourage flexibility and sustainability over time? What is the result of changes that are made, and how are those adaptations understood by the stakeholders? So that's our piece here on emergence. And before I move on to the next section, we did receive a question that I'd like to address. It says, what constitutes a notable program? A notable program is language that we decided to use in the survey. In notable programs are really those that were nominated by survey respondents. They said that these are programs that have unique characteristics. We did present a couple of different areas in which the programs may have unique characteristics. Perhaps it was in the way that they collected data and evidence of their program outcomes. It may have been in the way that the program was designed to meet industry or local standards. It could have been in the way that they reach out to underserved student populations. So there were a couple of different areas that we allowed folks to identify with and said, tell us about your programs and what's particularly special about them. So these notable programs are those that are nominated by survey respondents, and then we followed up to learn more about them. hope that that is helpful to you. Okay. Now let's go ahead and move to our discussion to this idea of the environment of uncertainty that surrounds applied baccalaureate degrees, pathways, and programs. And we're going to look at this idea of uncertainty in 4 areas. One being the variety found in program structures, designs, terminology used. The second being some questions that are raised by the strikingly similar characteristics of many transferable and non-transferable associate degree programs. We have then the limited evidence regarding outcomes and success of degree programs. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about some missed opportunities to communicate about degree pathways on departmental and degree program websites. So starting with variety, and this is certainly no surprise to us based on past research and our understandings that many AB degree programs have been developed locally to meet local needs. But the evidence collected in our study seemed to suggest that perhaps variety was our strongest constant across our data. So for example, we discovered that in 1 of 5 cases that were identified, the baccalaureate degree was awarded by a community college or other primarily associate degree institution. In the other cases, they were awarded by 4-year colleges or universities. We also found variety in the design of the upper-level baccalaureate degree curriculum content. In just over 60% of cases, we found a career ladder model in which the upper-level courses continued with both academic and technical coursework that increased in complexity. In nearly 20% of the cases, we found a management capstone approach where the upper-level courses prepared students for management and leadership roles rather than doing the advanced technical knowledge. There were also a few hybrid programs that we ran into, and there was one upside-down example in our data set. Interestingly, this finding differs considerably from our past research. In our Lumina-funded study, funded national state-by-state policy inventory that we did, we uncovered the opposite situation with curricular models, such that looking at this in the bigger picture, we saw that the management capstone models were more common than career ladder models. And this may signal an interesting difference in degree pathway design when we specifically focus on STEM technician education. And then there were the fields of study. More than 30 different fields of study were reported as associated with the 95 identified traditional and applied baccalaureate degree pathways. The most common field, manufacturing and engineering technology, was reported in just over 30% of the cases. This was followed by computer and information technology and biotechnology, with the field of other being the next highest reported. The other field of study category, which was reported in 20 cases, included a broad range of responses, including aquarium science, instrumentation, automation and control, lasers, photonics and optics, quality assurance, robotics, solar and fuel cells, and so on. So noting the wide variety of baccalaureate degree programs raises important questions for future inquiries. For example, with so much variety and so much localized development of these degree pathways, what can be expected regarding replicability from one degree pathway to another? What can be learned from one setting that can be adopted or adapted into another setting? And with all of this variety, how can stakeholders understand baccalaureate degree pathways in general and applied baccalaureate degrees in particular? Now let's move into some interesting discussions of associate degree curricula, and I'll begin with a word of caution regarding this data presentation. When comparing transferable and non-transferable curricula, we chose to focus on cases where both degrees were offered at the same institution and in the same field, because doing so removes many potential areas of variability. However, it also limited our numbers. So we're focusing here on just 8 cases which had both transferable and non-transferable associate degree options. We examined these cases in 3 categories. We had 4 cases that had minimal differences between the 2 degrees, so 1 or 2 classes were different, it's approximately 5 to 11% of the curriculum. We had 1 case where we considered it was moderate difference, so there were 4 or 5 classes that were different, or approximately 20% of the curriculum, and 3 cases in which we saw substantial difference between the degrees, ranging from 30 to 60% of the curriculum being different. And let me share with you some of the interesting data that comes from this. So what you're seeing here on this slide is the differences in the curricular for the minimal difference and moderate difference cases. The first 3 cases from Florida had a similar story. The non-transferable AAS curriculum existed first, and these three institutions had recently developed the transferable AS degree curriculum. The reasons for doing so were twofold. On the one hand, respondents mentioned a change in the political environment in the state, encouraging a move away from the AAS degree. Second, the institutions were making changes so that the associate degree could be accepted as a block, meaning all credits or nearly all credits, to bachelor degree programs with which they had articulations. The AAS degrees, on the other hand, would be unpacked by the four-year institution, and courses would be considered for transfer on an individual basis, often meaning that fewer credits would transfer in the long run. Note the differences in these three cases. The difference between the non-transferable degree and the transferable degree amounts to changing a single mathematics or a single composition course. In the Wisconsin example, those who are in the transfer associate degree track take two mathematics courses, Calculus 1 and Calculus 2, that are different from the general associate degree track students who take electives and technical courses. And at Edmonds Community College in Washington, our moderate difference example, the difference between the Associate of Applied Sciences transfer track and the non-transferable Associate of Technical Arts lies in the general education courses. More choice is offered to the ATA students, while the transfer students are required to take specific general education courses for transfer. Also interesting about these 5 cases is that in 4 of them, we were able to confirm with the institution that the non-transfer option existed first, and then that option was adapted for transfer. For the 3 institutions with substantial differences in curricula between the AS and the AAS degrees, differences were found across the curricula, including general education, liberal arts, writing, mathematics, and science courses. It's much too much to show on one slide, but you can read about it in our technical report if you're interested. And the program administrators at these institutions reflected different underlying purposes for these degrees. So on this slide, you can see an example where the respondent talks about choices related to general education requirements in the transfer to non-transfer routes. And so this leads us to more curiosities. With so much overlap in coursework, are students in terminal versus transfer associate degree programs differentially prepared for future careers and educational opportunities? And if preparation does in fact lead to similar outcomes, why is one associate degree terminal while the other is fully transferable? Who is advantaged or disadvantaged by that approach? What value exists for maintaining separate tracks versus merging all pathways into transferable curricula? And how do students perceive the similarities and differences between the transferable and terminal degree programs? Do they understand how their current degree program choices affect future opportunities? Of course, there's much more to ponder here, but in the interest of time, I see I'm running a bit behind, so I'm going to roll on forward. Another uncertainty confirmed by past research, and again revealed in our work, was the limited evidence of student outcomes. Many of our respondents did point to anecdotal evidence of success stories for individual students. So here on this slide is an example that was reported where students who once felt disconnected and unsure if they could handle college, now they're learning to see themselves as successful students who know what they want and have built confidence that they can achieve it. So we have these pieces. However, moving beyond those anecdotes, evidence is clearly lacking and sorely needed. In our initial exploratory survey, questions regarding baccalaureate degree level programs demonstrated knowledge gaps such that in over half of the cases, information about the availability of student level outcomes data were unknown by the survey respondents. Data collection and knowledge of that data was reported by only a minority of the respondents, ranging from 14% reporting data availability regarding post-graduation outcomes to 26% reporting data availability related to student demographics. Now, of course, several reasons were cited regarding the inability to track that student progress. It included a small number of faculty who manage these programs, not having time or staff support to pursue evaluation and tracking efforts, and the lack of reporting systems that cross institutional boundaries. And some of the questions for future work that this leads us to includes how do we uncover what evidence is available to demonstrate applied baccalaureate degree pathway outcomes? How are those outcomes and measures impacts measured? What drives data collection? How are results shared with whom? And what might further support the collection, analysis, and sharing of data? Finally, I'd like to turn briefly to uncertainties related to missed opportunities to communicate information on websites. Despite our being confident of baccalaureate degree pathways' existence based on our survey responses, we were unable to locate information about the existing pathways on 30% of the cases in which the websites were searched. Even among the applied baccalaureate degree pathways that had been identified by our respondents as notable, gaps in website communications existed, as can be seen in the data presented on this slide. Now, we view the lack of information on institutional websites as a missed opportunity to communicate about the existence of baccalaureate degree pathways. Websites are a primary way that higher education institutions communicate about their academic programs to prospective students, current students, employers, policymakers, administrators, program directors, and so on. The lack of information about baccalaureate degree pathways on these websites contributes to the theme of uncertainty. It's a missed opportunity for communication with stakeholders who could benefit from knowing about the existence of the baccalaureate degree pathways and the relationships between the institutions that participate in them. And it leads to some larger questions regarding how information is shared and what avenues for communication are optimal for sharing information on applied baccalaureate degree pathways. It also contributes to the question of how applied baccalaureate degrees are perceived by key stakeholders and what contributes to those perceptions. I hope that the information shared thus far has been helpful to you. For more information, you can view our technical report for this study at the website provided on this slide. And of course, we'll make certain to share this web address with you again. But for now, I'd like to turn the floor over to Chris Mullen, who will provide some reflections on this research and the topic from a different point of view, his coming from the American Association of Community Colleges.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I want to thank the researchers at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and the OCCRL for inviting me to be here and talk with you today. My name is Christopher Mullen, and I'm the Program Director for Policy Analysis at the American Association of Community Colleges. I've had the opportunity to look over their reports and their technical reports and thought I'd share just my reactions and some responses with you today. I'm also very interested in any questions that you might have. Obviously, the topic of transfer and pathways and completion is at the forefront of federal policy discussions. In the past day alone, I've received a couple of inquiries from people on the Hill in different organizations and agencies within Washington, D.C. about transfer in general. And so the presentation couldn't come at a better time as we try and help inform federal policy and include the applied baccalaureate pathways in that conversation. So, in looking and reading over the reports, there were 8 themes that were put forth in their technical report, and I kind of grouped them into 3 larger categories as I kind of see it and understand it for the purposes of my reaction here today. One is that their findings, as they note, a variety was the strongest constant, and I like that quote. That each institution, there are approximately 1,200 community colleges in the country, and each institution is its own state of evolution or innovation. And this study is a testament to that fact. This is a defining characteristic of the community college, and it's an important foundation upon which to think about the work they do as they evolve to address the changing demands of the locality in terms of population shifts, demographics such as age, gender, and ethnicity, and also economic conditions. The NSF-ATE centers examined as part of this project focused on baccalaureate degree pathways, which were initiated by a number of sources, including the institutions, baccalaureate degree granting institutions, NSF-ATE funded centers, and a combination of sources. And that is to say that there are a lot of different actors involved in determining the curriculum that happens on a college campus, which I think makes them nimble and responsive. And most clearly, these themes came up as we saw things that baccalaureate degree pathways are dominated by variety. Current definitions of AB degrees, pathways, and programs were insufficient to describe the identified cases. New baccalaureate degree pathways are emerging in STEM education, and AB degree pathways have a strong presence, and AB pathways adapt in response to their environments. So I think that the evolution is kind of the difficult part, even how the presentation opened up asking you to define an AB degree, points to the fact that the nimble nature of the colleges and how they're trying to respond to the changing needs of the workforce and the communities in which they operate. In addition, what I put in there is called validating options. The second reaction I had was the role of definitions play. By changing one course title, as we saw, or several, the end result changes. terminal becomes transferable, and a new world of opportunities emerge for students. I think this may stem from the challenge in indicating to prospective students the variety of options before them. Those of us who work with or teach undergraduates know that they can appreciate structure and clear directions to follow, and oftentimes they can be myopic about things. Perhaps, just perhaps, programs need to think about how to frame the educational opportunities they provide as valid options should students choose to leave or continue their education after reaching this milestone. It's my understanding, I teach a graduate course at George Mason University, so I haven't been on a community college campus teaching or talking with them. Well, I was in one in March, but it is the case that students come to the institutions, and oftentimes their main objective is to get a job. I believe roughly 2/3 come looking for a job. But what we need to allow them to do, and sometimes these technical associate degrees allow them to get a job, a decent paying jobs. Actually, some associate degrees pay more than bachelor's degrees. We know that. About 23% of workers with some college each actually earn more than those with bachelor's degrees. But what always holds is that students always have the opportunity to earn more when they work in field moving forward. And so I think in part of the communication, as I heard the presentation and read the paper, these pathways to students is to get them to think about how to continue on after their associate's degree and how to also bring people in who might already have an applied associate degree in a way that they can complete their education. And we saw the 5 different general models presented by the researchers here today. In looking at the themes, applied and traditional associate degree programs can exhibit strikingly similar characteristics. We know that to be the case. Departmental and degree program websites miss opportunities to communicate baccalaureate degree pathways, and I think that's more what I spoke to in this way, is talking about the different pathways students have available to them. And then some respondents avoid language due to perceived stigma, and we know that there's sometimes stigma associated with a bit different terminology within the higher education landscape. And lastly, I want to talk about the idea of breaking down silos. This study reinforces the need to break down data silos. They said only 14% of respondents understood the workforce outcomes of their students. We know within the next couple of weeks, gainful employment data will be returned to colleges, oftentimes in certificates and some applied associate degree programs. They'll allow programs to better understand the earnings of students after they leave the programs. I know part of my work at the association is to ensure and encourage that colleges have access to this type of data to allow them to better understand the impact of their programs on their students and their community. So those are my initial reactions and thoughts in terms of the 8 major themes or findings that the researchers put together. But really what this all comes to is also kind of a so what question. Well, last fall, part of my work at the association is to write policy briefs, and the one I wrote last fall was titled "The Road Ahead, a Look at Trends in the Educational Attainment of Community College Students." And what I decided to do is look at educational attainment trends in terms of the number of students walking across the stage at community colleges over the past 20 years. What I found was kind of shocking for a lot of different reasons. It's before you now, it's figure 1, the number of associate degrees and certificates earned at community colleges. So the associate degrees are in green, and they use the vertical axes on the right in terms of the numbers. The other lines reflect the number of certificates, and the vertical axis on the left provides the number and the scale there for you. But what we see is a dramatic increase in these less than 1 year certificates starting in about 1998-99 and continuing onward. The authors note that talent is, of this paper, notice that talent is lost through the various stages of educational pipeline, and women and minorities remain significantly underrepresented in STEM majors and careers. This figure shows that over the past 20 years of the study from 1989-90 to 2009-2010, there was a 127% increase in the number of credentials awarded by community colleges. Over the same period of time, enrollment increased only 65%. So clearly colleges are community colleges are doing a better job at graduating students. Not included on this chart, but also relevant to this conversation, is community colleges in 2009-2010 awarded approximately 8,500 bachelor's degrees. Most commonly, these were in business and management, which differs a little bit from this research that points more towards degrees in engineering and information technology. So as we continue on to think about that figure, next slide please. The authors, what we note again is that increase in less than 1 year certificates. So what we did is broke out that data by race and ethnicity, going back over time. And what we found was fairly startling. Again, we started in 1989-90 because that's really when this data started to become available. It wasn't until actually 86, 87 that consistent data was available by race and ethnicity for college completions of students. And so we cut it off at 89-90 just to make it even with the 2009-2010 year. But what we see are dramatic increases, actually a 459% increase in the number of short-term certificates or 1 year certificates of 1 year or less earned at community colleges over this time period. When we disaggregate them by race and ethnicities, the pattern indicate a 440% increase in certificates earned by white students, a 776% increase in certificates earned by black students, a 1,338% increase in earned certificates by Hispanic students, a 947% increase in earned certificates by Asian Pacific Islander students, and a 757% increase in earned certificates by American Indian and Alaskan Native students. Short-term certificates were primarily awarded in the fields of health professions, business and management, and mechanic and repair technologies. So, why do I bring this to your attention? If we believe that education has a role in intergenerational mobility, and we acknowledge the demographic diversity of this country is changing, then we must find a way to make sure these short-term certificates feed into applied associate degrees and bachelor's degrees in order to increase the number of underrepresented students in the STEM pipeline. So when your work is being put together to try and find these pipelines between the associates and the bachelor's degrees, I guess what my response would be is don't forget to think about how certificates can also feed into this pipeline as well. I therefore encourage the practitioners and researchers on this call to think systematically when they design new programs and communicate them to students through infographics or whatever visual way you can do so, and to show value for all post-secondary education levels and encourage continued educational attainment. So with that said, I'll be happy to take questions, or I'll turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Chris. So at this point, we're going to turn the presentation over to you and to take some of your questions. They have been pouring in, so thank you very much. We're doing our best to organize them. We've got about 11 more minutes left, so we'll answer as many as we can. If we do not get to your question, we will attempt to follow up with you via email. You're also welcome to email me, and we'll make sure you get an answer to your question. So don't be shy. Keep bringing them in, and we'll go as quickly as we can. So the first question I have here is, maybe I'll direct this to Colin, who may be able to help us. It says, is there a database of various BAS degrees to use as a reference when developing a similar degree at your institution?
Okay, well, that's actually a terrific question. I will say I've been working with Applied Baccalaureate degrees since 2007. And in that work, we started in a project funded by Lumina Foundation for Education. We did do a 50-state inventory of Applied Baccalaureate degree programs across the U.S., and that report is posted on our website. And additionally, with this NSF project, if you go to the technical report, you can actually see a pretty full description of a lot of programs, particularly in STEM fields. So there's a particular emphasis on STEM programs. So if you want to find out some more information about that, I would refer you to those reports. I mean, you could certainly get a good idea of what's out there if you're interested in using them as models, but we certainly would love to hear from you on things that you're looking for.
Thank you so much, Colin. We should also mention that we will have a recording of this presentation, and that will be available on our website. We can send you the link to the recording, and maybe when we do that, we can also include the link to the Lumina-funded study and the reports there, so you'll have immediate access to it. All right, a next question here, and maybe Chris might have some things to say on this as well. I might as well. The question that came in is the term STEM technician perhaps open to being interpreted in a pejorative manner, a person with a terminal credential or someone who has a lesser degree? And Chris, you already spoke a bit to the idea of terminology and stigma. Could you maybe respond to that a bit?
I think that to a certain extent, certain people have preconceived notions about what different types of degrees mean. For me personally, as I think back to it, I think back to when I was actually a K-12 teacher, and what I learned is the reason why people put other people down is to make themselves feel better. So I don't tend to take it personally. I think that research is coming out of places like Georgetown Center on Education and the Workforce and other places that show the economic value of these associate degrees. As I mentioned, there's a lot of them where you can earn more than those students with bachelor's degrees. And I think that that's helping to change the conversation and paradigm around it. I think that this current president and even Mitt Romney, who's running against him, spoke at Lansing Community College last week, shows that the community college is really finally being acknowledged in a way, and people are seeing them differently. Let's put it that way. 22% of students from families with incomes over $100,000 are attending community colleges. So I think we're in the middle of a paradigm shift.
And if I could add to that one as well, this is a question that our research is also very interested in. And I should mention the next steps in our research. What we're going to be doing next is we're currently in a process of doing site visits. We're selecting approximately 6 to 8 sites based on our earlier efforts that we're going to be going out and visiting and trying to dig deeper and understand the pathways and the relationships between institutions. And we're going to be talking to students and to employers and trying to get a sense of how terminology is used, how people view these degrees, and where people go with these degrees, so that hopefully we can get a better sense of, we can kind of address the question you've asked, understandings of the value of these degrees and how they differ from other ones. I have a couple of questions I'm going to combine here. Let's see. We have a couple of questions about employers. Is there evidence that employers value the AB degree more than the AAS degree? How are ABD grads generally hired as engineers or technicians? Another question about getting a job and what's the value of graduating from these programs. I think what we can point to at this point is, and I guess maybe I should toss this one in too. It seems a little bit different, but the answer is very similar. Has this type of degree been a solid pathway to graduate degree programs? So where are students going when they come out of an applied associate or applied baccalaureate degree? And I think what we have in terms of responses to these questions is very anecdotal evidence. So there's anecdotal evidence that some students are going on to make the transition to graduate programs. There's anecdotal evidence from a handful of employers who speak to the value of applied education and applied baccalaureates or applied associate degrees. But there's a lot of work remains to be done in this area, and that's something that we will be very focused on in the next 2 years of this particular project that we're working on, to see if we can get a little bit deeper into the understandings of those issues. So I feel like that's only half an answer, but it's what we have today. Let's see. Another question here, somebody says that they're still a bit fuzzy on applied baccalaureate degrees. How exactly do they differ from, say, a Bachelor's of Science program? This individual is referencing that they have an Associate Applied Science that feeds directly into a four-year university that offers the BS degree. And so what you'll see, if you recall, I'm going to try and flip back to our earlier slide. Oh, if I can do that. Let's see if it'll let me get back there. When we look at these applied baccalaureate degrees, we have to date been considering them very broadly. It's interesting because when you have the applied associate degree that's going into the Bachelor of Science degree, and what we've been talking about is, is it technical coursework that historically would not have been transferred but now has a place to go? Are there new opportunities for students? And so when we think about these applied baccalaureate degree programs, that's what we're looking at. Are we creating new opportunity for students to move in directions that they may not have been able to in the past? So right, it's a moving target. We're looking at trying to define and nail down what these applied baccalaureate degrees are, but the pathways are very different from state to state, and I hope you don't mind mentioning, if I mention it, this question comes from somebody out in Kentucky, and we've had some very interesting conversations in Kentucky with folks around applied language and the stigma, potential stigma of applied language, and some attempts to move away from that. So there are some states that stay away from the applied designation. And so what we're going to be doing is, like, for instance, one of the things that we're doing now is we have 2 site visits at places that offer degrees in cybersecurity. One is a BS degree, and the other is a BT, a Bachelor's in Technology. So we're looking at how people talk about those pathways. We'll be comparing the curriculum in those pathways to see if we can dig a little bit deeper and say how similar or how different are these. But at this point, it's a bit of a moving animal. I hope that helps. Do others want to add to that? All right. Let's see. Well, we are running a little short on time here, so I have a couple of other questions. But what we'll do is we can see who they're from. So we'll attempt to follow up with you via email. Any last comments from Colin or Chris? Last ideas you want to share?
You know, I'll just go ahead and say that we've published our technical report in addition to an executive summary, and a lot of the discussions that we're having today are really things that need to be addressed and things that we've tried to address. And if you go to the executive summary on our website, which is there at the bottom of your screen, you'll actually see kind of in a concise way some of the discussions that we've had about the definitions of applied baccalaureate degrees, how we see them existing in STEM fields, and if you're really interested in seeing some of those lived out in practice, we do highlight them in our technical report. It's a really beneficial document. I think you might benefit from reading it, so I just encourage you all to look at that. Chris, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm learning a lot from you at the research that you're doing, and I look forward to the questions as well to better understand how we can help colleges that are offering these awards continue to do so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much to everybody who was involved, to Colin and to Chris. We should also thank Deborah Bragg, who is the PI for the research that we're doing here and has been a wonderful leader along the way, our advisory group as well. And also Stacy Bennett, who is a graduate assistant with us, who has just graduated with her PhD. We're very sad to say goodbye to her, but she has been a fabulous influence on our project. You can see here on the screen places to go to get some more information. Please feel free to send me an email. For instance, we just got a question if there's some examples of engineering or engineering technology applied baccalaureate degrees. Absolutely there are by those titles. So send me a note and I'd be happy to talk with you about that further. We have a couple of new publications out. And this webinar will also be posted on the website address that you see here. So thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your participation, and we look forward to continuing to have future conversations with you. We wish you all the best.